Have you ever poured your heart into someone only to feel like they were calculating every moment of love as if it were an investment? You gave them vulnerability, passion, and commitment. Yet what you got back felt like a contract, not a connection. That's the painful reality of being with someone who treats love like a business transaction. And let me tell you this, it's not because you're not enough. It's because of how their mind has been wired to survive. Love to an avoidant often doesn't feel like a safe place. It feels like risk, and risk in their world must be managed, minimized, and controlled. That's why so many avoidants act like love is a ledger, costs and benefits, give and take, push and pull. Today, I want to break down 7 truths that will set you free from confusion, frustration, and self-blame. Have you ever noticed how, when you open your heart to an avoidant, it feels like they're always keeping score? You give affection, they pull back. You try to connect, they shut the door. And you wonder, why does love feel so heavy to them? Why does intimacy feel like a punishment instead of a gift? The answer is simple but profound. They fear emotional debt. To an avoidant, the language of love is not warmth, but obligation. When you say, "I love you," what they hear is, "Now you owe me something." When you give them kindness, in their nervous system it feels like pressure, like now they must give something back, and that terrifies them. It's not because they don't care, but because caring feels like a bill that's due, and they're not sure they can afford it. Think about it. Love requires reciprocity. It thrives on mutual giving, shared effort, and emotional exchange. But in the avoidance world, giving too much feels like a trap. They're haunted by the thought that if they give you their heart, you'll own it, and if they show you their vulnerability, you'll use it against them. So instead of leaning in, they ration their emotions like they're protecting their last dollar. They give in small doses, just enough to keep the relationship alive, but never enough to feel like they're in debt. And here's the painful part. When you love an avoidant, you often feel like you're paying interest on a loan you never signed up for. You invest more, you sacrifice more, you open yourself more, while they guard every ounce of affection like it's scarce currency. You're left confused, asking yourself, why can't they just relax? Why can't they just love? But to them, love is not a safe flow. It's a risk assessment. What you need to understand is that their fear of emotional debt comes from survival, not malice. Many avoidants grew up in environments where closeness came with strings attached. Love meant control. Care meant conditions. So they learned early, never owe too much, never give too much, never rely too much. Their entire system screams protect, withhold, escape. So when you step into their world and offer love freely, it doesn't register as freedom to them. It registers as danger. And until they learn that true love doesn't enslave, it liberates, they will continue to treat vulnerability like a bill they can't afford to pay. For an avoidant, independence is not just a preference. It's their currency. It's the thing they guard, protect, and treasure more than almost anything else. Where most people see love as a place of safety, an avoidant sees it as a potential thief, something that might steal their freedom, their choices, their sense of control. They don't measure love in warmth. They measure it in cost. And to them, the biggest cost is losing autonomy. When you reach for closeness, they instinctively calculate, if I give too much, will I lose myself? This is why so many avoidants thrive in the early stages of a relationship when everything is exciting, fresh, and light. There are no demands, no heavy expectations, no emotional contracts to sign. But as soon as the relationship deepens, as soon as intimacy asks for consistency, reliability, and emotional presence, they start to panic. Because in their mind, every new level of closeness feels like someone dipping into their bank account of independence. Their independence is their safety net. It's the one thing they believe no one can take away. So the moment they sense that love requires them to merge their life, their time, their choices, they pull back. Not because they don't feel love, but because love feels like debt, and independence is the only way they know how to stay profitable in the relationship. They want to be close, but not too close. They want connection, but only on their terms. And the second they feel their independence slipping, their defenses activate like an alarm system. To you, dependence may feel like partnership. To them, it feels like loss. You might say, we're a team, we're building something together. But inside their nervous system, the message translates as, I'm losing control of my own life. And when independence is their currency, they guard it like a measure guards gold. Every request for more time, every push for deeper intimacy, every attempt to bring them closer feels like a withdrawal they didn't authorize. So while you're trying to share love as an expansion, they're trying to protect love as a limitation. It's not that they don't value you. It's that their highest value, the one they refuse to compromise, is independence. And until they learn that love doesn't have to cost them freedom, they'll keep treating relationships like a negotiation where their autonomy is always at stake. When you love an avoidant, one of the most frustrating patterns you'll notice is how they handle intimacy. It rarely flows naturally, freely, or spontaneously. Instead, it feels rationed, measured, negotiated, like they're giving you just enough to keep the connection alive, but never enough to let it overflow. You lean in expecting closeness, and what you get feels more like installments on a payment plan. They offer affection when it feels safe, they withdraw when it feels too costly, and all of it is carefully calculated so they never feel like they're giving more than they can manage. To the avoidant, intimacy is not simply about opening up, it's about managing risk. Every act of closeness, whether it's sharing feelings, spending time together, or showing affection, feels like a transaction they have to evaluate. If I let this person too close, what will it cost me? If I share too much, what if they use it against me? If I depend on them, what happens if they leave? These questions run silently in the background of their minds, and because of that, intimacy becomes something they regulate instead of something they embrace. This is why avoidants are often masters of mixed signals. One moment they can be affectionate, attentive, even deeply loving, and the next they're distant, cold, detached, as if the warmth you just shared never happened. That push-pull dynamic is not random. It's the avoidant negotiating how much intimacy they can tolerate without tipping into vulnerability. They let you in just enough to feel connected, but then retreat before they feel exposed. To them, this isn't cruelty, it's survival. It's how they keep the balance between wanting love and fearing its demands. The tragic irony is that many avoidants crave connection just as deeply as anyone else. They want to love and be loved, but the way they negotiate intimacy often leaves their partners starving for more. You might feel like you're constantly waiting for them to open up, constantly earning tiny fragments of closeness, constantly proving yourself worthy of their affection. And the truth is, you're not imagining it. They really are treating intimacy like a scarce resource, because in their world, too much closeness equals too much risk. So instead of letting intimacy be the natural bond it's meant to be, they keep it under lock and key, releasing it in controlled amounts, always making sure they never give more than they can safely afford. Control is everything to an avoidant. When it comes to relationships, their sense of safety doesn't come from love, trust, or emotional connection. It comes from knowing they can dictate the pace, the rules, and the terms. If they feel like they are in control, they can breathe. If they feel like the relationship is flowing too freely or unpredictably, it feels like danger, and their instinct is to pull back hard. To them, control is not just a preference, it's their profit margin, the one thing that ensures they don't lose in the exchange of intimacy. When you look at how they behave, you'll notice patterns that all revolve around this hidden drive for control. They decide when to text, when to call, when to open up, and when to withdraw. And if you try to push them to respond faster, love deeper, or commit sooner, you'll likely hit a wall. Why? Because your push feels like a loss of their control. In their nervous system, it registers as a threat. They don't just hear your request as, "I need you closer." They interpret it as, "I'm losing the power to decide how this relationship goes." And that loss of power feels intolerable. This is why avoidants often appear calm, composed, or detached even during conflict. They would rather shut down than get swept up in emotions they can't control. They'd rather walk away than risk being pulled into a storm of vulnerability they don't know how to handle. Their silence, their withdrawal, their coldness, it's not random. It's their way of regaining the upper hand, reestablishing the sense that they are the ones setting the terms. For the person who loves them, this is maddening, because love at its best is meant to be a dance, not a dictatorship. It's meant to flow freely, not be micromanaged like a contract. And yet, when you're with an avoidant, You often feel like you're auditioning for permission to love them on their schedule, under their conditions. They give you glimpses of closeness, but only when they feel they won't lose control in the process. And here's the twist. Many avoidants don't even realize they're doing this. It's so deeply wired into them that controlling the terms of love feels natural, even necessary. To them, unpredictability equals danger and control equals survival. So they cling to it fiercely, even if it means sacrificing the very intimacy they secretly long for. For most people, emotions are the heartbeat of connection. They're the color in the picture, the music in the background, the force that makes love alive. But to an avoidant, emotions don't feel like beauty, they feel like expenses. They treat feelings the way a business owner treats bills, something to minimize, something to cut down, something that drains their resources. Where you might see tears as healing or vulnerability as bonding, they see those very same things as costs they can't afford. When you cry in front of them, you might expect comfort, reassurance, maybe even closeness. Instead, you often get distance or silence, not because they don't care, but because your emotions trigger alarm bells inside them. They think, if I engage with this, I'll get pulled in. If I validate this, I'll have to give more than I have. If I feel this, I'll lose control. And so, rather than leaning in, they back out. They'd rather cut the expense than invest in something they don't know how to handle. It's the same with their own emotions. They rarely let themselves feel too deeply because depth feels like a liability. Joy, sadness, fear, longing, all of these emotions open the door to vulnerability, and vulnerability is the last thing they want. So they regulate their feelings with military precision, staying surface level, staying safe, avoiding the intensity that could make them dependent on someone else. To them, numbness feels cheaper than depth. The heartbreaking part is that this emotional avoidance leaves their partner feeling starved. You want to share joy, but they dismiss it. You want to share sadness, but they withdraw. You want to create a bond built on feelings, but they act like emotions are a drain on their account. And over time, you start to wonder if maybe your emotions really are too much. But they're not. The truth is your emotions are the currency of intimacy, and the avoidant's refusal to spend them is not a reflection of your worth, it's a reflection of their fear. Deep down, many avoidants long for the richness of emotional connection, but their conditioning has taught them that emotions equal loss, not gain. So they shut down, repress, and detach, trying to protect themselves from what they believe will bankrupt them. The irony, of course, is that in protecting themselves from emotional expenses, they end up missing out on the wealth of true intimacy. One of the most exhausting patterns you'll notice with avoidance is how they constantly weigh, measure, and calculate everything in a relationship. It's as if they're running an audit, keeping a mental balance sheet of every interaction. When you express a need, they immediately evaluate what it will cost them. When there's a conflict, they calculate how much energy, time, or vulnerability they'll have to spend. Even moments of closeness aren't just felt, they're analyzed. Am I giving too much? Am I getting enough in return? Am I losing control? It's not love in its raw, free form. It's love run through the logic of a spreadsheet. Imagine sitting across from someone, pouring out your heart, and instead of meeting you with presence, they're silently tallying. If I respond this way, what will it mean? If I give more, will they expect more tomorrow? If I compromise, does that mean I've lost ground? That's the reality of being with an avoidant. They don't surrender to connection, they audit it. They see relationships not as a flow of giving and receiving, but as a constant exchange of profit and loss. This is why they often seem hesitant when you ask for more. To you, asking for reassurance or commitment feels natural, but to them, it sets off an internal calculator. They start thinking, if I agree, how much more will I be expected to give? What will this cost me in independence, time, or control? That constant auditing prevents them from ever fully relaxing into the relationship because love is never just love, it's always a potential liability. The irony is, this pattern doesn't just protect them, it actually keeps them trapped. By focusing on not losing too much, they never allow themselves to gain the richness of connection. By guarding against emotional overdraft, they never experience emotional abundance. And the partner who loves them often ends up feeling like they're on trial, like every word, every need, every moment is being judged and scored instead of embraced. This constant auditing comes from a deep-rooted fear of being overextended, of giving more than they can sustain, of being left depleted. But what they fail to realize is that love isn't a transaction you can balance. Love doesn't work on ledgers. Love expands the more you give it. And as long as they keep treating every moment as a cost analysis, they'll miss out on the one thing they're unconsciously searching for, a connection that doesn't need to be measured to be real. The truth is this love was never meant to be a business transaction. It's not a ledger to balance. It's not a contract to negotiate. It's not a deal to protect yourself from losing. Love is abundance. It's the one force in life that multiplies when you give it, that grows when it's shared, that strengthens when it's expressed. But avoidants, caught in their cycle of fear, miss this reality. They're so busy protecting themselves from imagined losses that they never taste the wealth that love actually offers. Think about it. When you give love freely, you don't run out, you create more. When you forgive, you don't lose power, you gain peace. When you choose vulnerability, you don't become weaker. You become stronger because you've tapped into authenticity. Love works on an entirely different economy. It's not scarcity, it's overflow. It doesn't depreciate with use, it compounds. The more you invest in it, the more valuable it becomes. And yet, avoidants often live as though every act of intimacy will bankrupt them, as if every moment of closeness is one step closer to losing themselves. But here's what they don't see: by holding back, by rationing, by calculating, they actually create the very loss they're trying to avoid. They don't lose independence because someone loved them too much. They lose intimacy because they refuse to lean in. They don't lose control because a partner asked for more. They lose the connection because they withdrew before they could experience its depth. Their fear of being diminished in love becomes the very reason they never get to experience love's expansion. For the person who loves an avoidant, this can be deeply painful. You see the possibility, the beauty, the joy of what love could be if it were freed from fear. You feel the hunger for connection that lingers between the cracks of their walls. And you know deep down that love could be so much more than the scraps of affection they allow themselves to release. But you cannot force someone to understand abundance if they're addicted to scarcity. You cannot convince someone that love is infinite when they insist on treating it like a limited resource. What you can do is remember this: your love does not lose value by being rejected. Your capacity to give, to feel, to connect is not defined by someone else's fear. Love is not a business, not a bargain, not a transaction. It's life's greatest gift, and when you embrace it as abundance, you step into the kind of wealth that no fear can ever take away. When you step back and look at the patterns of avoidance, you begin to see the bigger picture. Their entire relationship with love has been built around fear, scarcity, and survival. They treat love like a business transaction, not because they don't feel, but because they don't trust what feelings mean. Every act of intimacy becomes a risk. Every emotion feels like a liability. Every step toward closeness is weighed as if it might cost them too much. And yet, beneath those walls, beneath the calculations and the distance, lies a heart that longs for the same connection we all crave, a heart that is simply terrified of being trapped or betrayed. But here's the shift: love cannot be bargained. You cannot reduce it to numbers, terms, or conditions. When love is treated like business, it loses its magic. It loses its ability to heal, to restore, to transform. The truth is, the moment you stop treating love as something to protect and start treating it as something to give, everything changes. Love becomes effortless. It stops draining you and starts energizing you. It stops feeling like a trap and starts feeling like freedom. And that's the paradox avoidants have yet to discover, that the very freedom they're fighting so hard to preserve is only found in the surrender they resist. For those of you who have loved an avoidant, I know how heavy it feels. I know what it's like to question yourself, to wonder if you're asking too much, to doubt whether your emotions are valid because they treat them like burdens. But you must never forget this: your love is not the problem. Your emotions are not too much. Your desire for closeness is not weakness, it is strength. The very fact that you can feel deeply, give freely, and choose vulnerability is proof of the abundance that lives in you. Never let someone else's fear convince you that your love is less valuable. And for the avoidants listening, hear me, you will never find safety in control. You will never find freedom in withdrawal. You will never find abundance in scarcity. The life, the intimacy, the connection you desire is waiting for you on the other side of fear. It's waiting for you the moment you stop negotiating love like a contract and start living it like the gift it was meant to be. Yes, vulnerability feels risky, but it is also the only doorway to real intimacy. Yes, emotions can overwhelm, but they are also the very fuel that makes relationships rich and unforgettable. So here's the invitation: stop treating love like business. Stop keeping ledgers. Stop negotiating every detail as if you're preparing for loss. Love is not a transaction, it's a transformation. And when you finally allow yourself to step into that truth, you'll discover that love doesn't cost you your freedom, it expands it. Love doesn't make you weaker, it makes you stronger. And love doesn't bankrupt you, it multiplies you. That's the power waiting on the other side of fear, the power of real, abundant, limitless love. Thank you so much for watching and sharing your time with me today. If this message spoke to your heart, don't just keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs to hear it right now. Your support means everything, and together we can spread awareness, healing, and strength to more people around the world. If you found value in this video, make sure to hit that like button, drop a comment below with your thoughts, and let me know what resonated with you the most. I read every single one, and your words inspire me to keep creating powerful content for you. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and turn on that notification bell so you never miss a future video. Every time you engage, you're helping this channel grow, and you're also helping someone else find the message they've been searching for. I'm deeply grateful for you being here. Remember, love is not a transaction, it's abundance. Carry that truth with you and let it guide the way you show up in your relationships and in your life. Until next time, take care of your heart, keep growing, and keep choosing the kind of love that sets you free. Thank you and goodbye for now.